It's time to feel what you've been bottling up. Life in rural America isn't easy. The long hours, the constant pressures, the demands of the land, livestock, and family, it all takes a toll. We're tough and we've got grit, but somewhere along the way, toughness started meaning bottling up emotions and powering through. But here's the truth. That strategy, it's not working and it's poisoning us. Maybe you've noticed and maybe you haven't, but the numbers don't lie. We're breaking down and it's showing up in our bodies, our relationships, and in the rising suicide rates in agriculture. You don't have to carry any of it alone. There's another way. If you're ready to stop being weighed down and start moving forward, my one-on-one good movement guidance is now open. Visit the link in the show notes to learn more and see if one-on-one guidance could be for you.
I'll carry you, you carry me, we'll help each other through it. Come on and see good movement draws good movement.
Welcome to Good Movement Draws Good Movement, the podcast where farmers, ranchers, and rural folks can grow relationally through awareness, understanding, and effective communication. Hey, it's T. I'm your host, and I, along with my guests, will be covering topics related to drawing good movement. Things like self and social awareness, brain science, positive psychology, extending grace, and so much more. We'll share tools that can help you understand why you are the way you are, why others are the way they are, and how you can use that to step out of self-told lies with grace and compassion to draw good movement in conversations, relationships, and life in rural America. Let's go draw good movement. Welcome back to the Good Movement Draws Good Movement podcast. Today, we have a friend of ours and our horse's farrier, Jake Ogren, on. I met Jake a couple years ago, and he's been putting shoes on my little red mare ever since. In that time, we've had many a conversation on the topic of mental health, trauma, and taking care of ourselves by seeking help either through therapy or guidance. Basically, when Jake comes to shoe horses, we solve all the world's problems in the horse barn. You can confirm or deny that.
Definitely. Whether or not it leaves the ranch is a different story.
Well, that's what we're doing today. We're taking that conversation outside the barn. I wanted to have Jake on because I've really learned a lot from our conversations and Jake's unique perspective. So thanks for being here, Jake.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little more about your background? I mean, you grew up in this area, and then maybe what led you to join the Marine?
Oh, yeah. I grew up about probably 20 miles north of here on a ranch and all that, and had to grow up pretty fast the way that my dad raised me. He served in the military during Vietnam, and then he was pretty tough. If you meet him now, he doesn't seem like it at all, but if you knew him back in the 80s, that was a different story. And then typical things through high school, sports and all that. And then I went off to college, and I was going to try to play football, and then 9/11 happened, and that just rocked my world, and I decided to join the Marine Corps. And yeah, that ended up being 12 years and 5 combat deployments. And then I had enough and got out and went to shoeing school.
Was there a specific moment or event that led you to seek help or begin your inner work?
Well, you could say it was a series of events, because if you, looking back, me from 20 years ago, I would have balked at any type of mental health. And what we did is if somebody had any problems, we told them to go see the wizard. So there was obviously a stigma about it in the military. But then there was a situation that happened over in Afghanistan that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, because there were guys that reacted differently to it. And then I decided to get out of the Marine Corps because of life choices. And then I had to do my exit physical and physical with the VA, and they have to poke and prod you and then check your brain and all that, like mental state, because you're advised to get as much compensation from the government as possible because of what we went through. And in the middle of that interview with psychologists or whatever, that was pretty eye-opening how I had been holding stuff in, and just him asking specific questions about what I saw, it made me think that I was wrong on how I viewed things in the past. That began my journey. And then another event that made me think I needed to take it more serious was when my daughter was born. I'm pretty stoic, and my best friend from high school, well, actually best friend from when I was a little kid, he always says that the only feeling that Jake has is hunger. So, I'm pretty stoic. And when Nora was born, we had to have not quite an emergency cesarean, but it was, hey, we got to get this done now. And they walked me in, get all that stuff going, and they brought me a chair and they said, would you sit down? I was like, why do I need to sit down? Like, I've been to combat. Like, I've seen things like this isn't going to bother me. They're like, it is for us liability reasons. So I obliged, and then Nora was born and they hand her to me. And I remember one of the nurses said something along the lines of how stoic I was. And I absolutely showed no emotion whatsoever. I don't know how Tom was when your kids were born, but you can either get happy, sad, or super happy, and you'd cry or whatever. And for me, there was absolutely nothing. At least I didn't show it. I had happiness inside, but like I was a rock.
It wasn't on display.
Right. And that, I guess, comes from all the military training of having bearing and all of that. So that's what began my decision to look inward, I guess.
So being in the military, there was the stigma, go see the wizard. But what about before that? Like growing up in the ranching community where we live?
It was unheard of. I don't even remember as a kid hearing of anybody going to a marriage therapist or anything like that. So as a kid, it was always toughen up and rub some dirt on it. And another thing that makes me think when you bring that up back then is right after I graduated high school, it was probably a month and a half after that, the guy I ate lunch with every single day of my senior year committed suicide. Like nobody knew what to do. The school didn't have therapists at that time or counselors or whatever. So it was just like, hey, toughen up.
Did anybody suspect it? Or because a lot of times what I see when someone is either died by suicide or attempted to die by suicide is, we had no idea. They always seemed happy. They were the most helpful person, all of those things. Was that happening then? Or did you guys kind of, was there indicators?
We had no idea of any indicators back then. At least I wasn't even paying attention because I was 18 years old. And my parents, I think they were at a loss too, because they'd never been around any of that. You know, nobody in our family or any of our friends. But then you go into the military and they like, as time went on, me knowing a handful of people who either did or attempted, they started to figure out some of the signs. Looking back, I wish we would have known more then than we do now, because we'd probably be ahead of the game at this point.
Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say now that you would consider yourself an advocate for therapy?
Yes, but I always have to put a disclaimer on it because not everybody needs it. But I guess I'm more of an advocate for taking care of your mental health yourself, because life's going to knock us down anyways, but you need to have the tools. And sometimes we don't have the tools to deal with all that kind of stuff. So if you don't know the tools and you're having a hard time, go see a therapist. Or if like you can't figure it out, you might need some medicine or something to not knock you down, but set you straight for a while. Because when I first got out of the Marine Corps, they put me on medicine for a while. Yeah, it mellowed me out. It was probably a good thing because I was pretty intense, at least in my own mind. Like, I guess I was stoic in front of everybody else, but what was going on in my mind needed to be fixed.
Yeah. I remember during one of our Solve the World's Problems shoeing sessions, you were telling me about the medicine, and you had said that at one point they told you if you don't want to be on the medicine, you're going to have to try something else.
Yep.
And so is that when you started going to therapy?
Yeah. Well, see, when they put me on medicine, they had me start talking to a therapist, and I went through 3 of them in a matter of 3 years, I think. I don't know if it was I didn't trust them, but they didn't have a military background, and it was just not that great of an experience to begin with, because I just felt like they were just trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound or something, you know. They were just trying to mask it instead of grow from it. And I got sick of some of the side effects of it, because you had to change your day every day because of it. So I told him I was done with it. And the third therapist said I better, start doing some inner work, because if you don't, it's going to come back and bite you in 20, 40 years, however long, and it'll be probably worse. So you better start now. And so then I found another therapist who was a veteran, and even with him, it took me a year to let things out, because he knew what I needed, but I wasn't that willing to accept it. It was kind of rough.
But I think that's what you said about going through 3 therapists and then finally finding the right one. It's not always just about going to therapy. It's about finding the right person to talk to. Because I know some of the people that have come to me to check out my one-on-one guidance are like, we know you're not a licensed therapist, but we've tried that and they don't understand our way of life.
Exactly.
And so it's not so much, I don't think, and you can confirm or deny, but I don't necessarily think it's always about just the therapy and the therapist. It's about finding the right person to help you and sit with you in some of that stuff.
Exactly. Like finding the right person, it helps you put your guard down, because you know that person has been through some stuff, and they get your kind of lifestyle. And if I go and talk to some person from the city that has never been in the military, like I'm going to have my guard up the whole time, because they have no idea what I've been through in my life and or what we do for a living.
Mm-hmm. And even when you do find the right person and you know they're the right person, you spent a lot of time putting the walls and the protection up. And so, like you said, it took you a year to finally let some of that go. Like it takes a while to take it down.
Yeah. On top of that is we don't have that person there daily. That's the other frustrating part, is you might only have 1 hour a week, or you might see the friend that you confide in every other week. And sometimes that's not enough. So you just hold on to stuff.
Have you ever journaled?
No, but I know the benefits of it. I guess I'm a little too scatterbrained. Like if I'm not moving, going on to your good movement thing, if I'm not moving, my brain is moving, and that is not fun. So I don't do a good job of sitting and like even reading. I can only read like a couple pages at a time, and then I have to go do something else. So journaling, not so much. My mind drifts, I guess, too much.
I'm getting better at journaling.
Yeah. I should use that tool, because I think about it, like that therapist that finally had a breakthrough with, he was like, you need a journal. And he said, it's not that you don't even have to keep a daily journal, but when you go through a situation where you lost your cool or something like that, write down what happened and how you handled it, and crumple that page up and throw it away. And then after that, you write down how you think you should have handled it, and then go from there.
I was part of the Enneagram cohort in 2023 and family systems and Enneagram in 2024. And on our last meeting last year, 2024, we got into the topic of journaling, and Suzanne Stabile was like, if you have a hard time journaling, ask yourself at the end of the day, what do I remember from the day? Mm-hmm. And start there. And she said, it's amazing what you can learn from that. And so that's kind of the approach that I've been taking, especially most recently with the cancer that I grew and
Right.
stuff like that. Don't do it every day, but I kind of do a little decompression.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and see, that leads into the whole taking time. You don't just take time, you need to learn to make the time to do that kind of stuff, use them tools. And that's where I struggle a lot is even when I get home from shoeing horses every day, I feel like, well, I need to do all this other stuff like drywall or paint or, go inventory or work with my own horse. But what I should be doing is taking that 5 to 10 minutes and doing the thing that's going to help me long term.
Taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For those who might be hesitant to seek help, what advice would you give them from your own experiences?
Do some kind of work, because the only way you're going to get through whatever it is you're going through is you have to put the work in. It's not going to come easy. It's not going to come overnight. You have to put the work in, whether it's journaling, reading, taking 20 minutes and listening to a podcast, or go work out. Like that's another one that probably got me in a bind when I first got out of the Marine Corps. When I was in the Marines, I was so used to running 3 to 10 miles a day. I got out of the Marine Corps and I found out how bad of a condition my feet were in, and I decided I would not run ever again. And there was a slow and steady decline in condition and all that. And now I see the benefits of working out daily, whether it's just push-ups or whatnot, but go do something, go move.
I mean, it helps you clear your mind, but also it increases the blood flow to your brain.
Exactly.
Which creates a healthier brain.
Yep. Well, doctors or scientists will not say this. They will say that your brain isn't a muscle, but your brain is like a muscle. You need to exercise it just like you do any other part of your body.
Yeah. Neuroplasticity. You can create new neural pathways your entire life. And if you exercise it, it's going to be all the more healthy as you age. Mm-hmm. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Do something.
I remember we were talking one time about exercise, and we kind of both agreed like being under a horse is physical exercise and ranching is physical exercise. But then you said, well, but if it's something you do every day, it's not really, because your body's so used to it. And I'm like, shut up, Jake.
Yeah. Yeah, I pretty much said that to my doctor a couple of years ago, because I was starting to have cholesterol and high blood pressure, and he told me that I needed to change my diet and work out. And I told him what I did, and he's like, well, how many years have you done it? And at that point, I think I'd been shoeing for 6 years. And he said, maybe the first year or two, it was a workout because you got your heart rate up. But once you've been conditioned for it and your heart rate does not go up, it's not a workout. So do something to get your heart rate up.
You don't know, doctor.
Yeah, but yeah. Why would I want to listen to my doctor?
How has therapy or the other forms of inner work that you do impacted your day-to-day life as a farrier and in your relationships as a friend, father, husband?
I would have to say it has given me more patience. And shoeing horses wise, prime example was yesterday, because 10 years ago when I first started shoeing full time, if I had a horse that fought it, I would muscle up and try and fight him and, try and manhandle the situation. And over the course of a decade, I have learned other tricks and tools and ways to get a horse to relax. And instead of just trying to muscle through it and toughen up and grit and bear it, I stop and I observe the situation that the horse is in and what might be stressing them out. Like the one horse yesterday, he got all stressed out because the owner took another horse out of the barn. And so it was just me and the horse I was trimming by ourselves. And that horse would not pick his feet up, would not do anything that he was supposed to. And the horse is a good horse, but as soon as he got put in that situation, he flipped out. So then I had to just, instead of manhandling the situation, I just walked out of the barn, asked the guy to bring the horse back in, and that was fine. And then we went about our business. So I guess it's just patience and observing. And over time, you'll be able to figure those things out faster because of your experience and the tools that you gain as you go through things.
Yeah. And we can even use Paisley, my little red mare, as an example there, because the first time you put shoes on her, she was great.
Mm-hmm.
And then she poked something into the bulb of her foot. And so she needed reset, and it wasn't quite healed up. And that was kind of painful. I mean, even though you were trying your best not to hit that spot, it's just a terrible spot.
Oh yeah. My leg was pressing against it or my hand
and then probably the
hammer.
Yeah. She really didn't like the hammer after that, because the next 2 times, every time you'd start to reset, she'd get all antsy dancy. And you were incredibly patient. We let her out and let her move her feet around while you were getting in between nails and doing different things. And then this last time that you came out, she just buried her head in my armpit and
just stood there.
So the patience pays off.
Yes. And then definitely with my kid, knowing that keeping emotions in isn't good, but also exploding with emotions isn't good either. So I guess I'm learning to be patient with my kid and teaching her what's acceptable. Like, yeah, you can be mad all you want, but I'm not going to cave, and you're not allowed to go break stuff. So go sit in your room for a while, reflect.
And showing her that it's okay to emote.
Yep. Yeah, it's okay to let those emotions out. But once you affect other people or start breaking things or whatever, that's where you have to draw the line.
I think that's kind of a common misconception, at least from my perspective, is that when we let kids have their feelings, that we just let them walk all over and terrorize things and people. And that's not the case. You can have your big emotions. They can have their big emotions, and you don't need to shut it down. And you can also say, I understand that you're mad, and being mad is okay, but we can't be breaking things.
Right.
We can't be hitting people.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, it makes me think of any type of ranch work. I know there's a bunch of guys that would hate me using this term, but we pretty much throw a tantrum when things don't go our way, or you've had a million little things not go your way or not go right. And so you just kind of explode, and that's not what we should do.
Or when your wife lets the wrong black calf through the gate and they're all black. And I guess maybe I need to rephrase, not that we can't break things, because we for sure can, but I'm not going to let you. I'm going to be here for you as your parent. I'm not going to let you hurt yourself or other people or things.
Yeah. Redirect the child.
I'm going to keep you safe.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So because we brought up the tantrums that we throw in ranching, what are some common misconceptions you see in rural America about mental health and seeking help? And how do you think we can break those down?
I would say there's 2 common misconceptions about it. And first one is a lot of people think it makes you look weak. And for that, I say no, like it's like working out. You're not weak. You're just trying to get stronger, because you can go to the gym, and if you haven't gone to the gym in 20 years, you think you can still bench press 225? No. So you gotta start with the bar, or start with one plate and put in the work and do the work for it. It's not that you're weak. It's just you're trying to better yourself, I guess, and make yourself stronger for later on in life. And then the other thing I think of is misconception is nobody has enough time. And I think that's BS. And I have to tell myself that all the time, because I think, well, I don't have time to read today. Well, I had time to sit down and watch a 20-minute episode of whatever show or a conspiracy theory video. You know, I could have taken those 20 minutes and read a couple pages or listened to a different podcast. And we do have time. And if you don't believe me, there's an app on your phone that tracks how long you spend time on certain apps.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pay attention to that, you'll see how much time in a week you've wasted doing ancillary things. And you could have spent an hour either talking to a therapist on the phone, because you don't have to drive to go see a therapist anymore.
Right. And we can't where we're at. We're limited on where there's this kind of help. So it's awesome that you can find help online or via the phone.
Yep.
Speaking to the I don't have time thing, several years ago, I think it was on social media or someone told me about it, but I saw this. Every time you say you don't have time, ask yourself if you really don't have time or if it's not a priority.
You're right.
So I started doing that with myself, and damn, it hurts when I say, actually, I do have time. This just isn't the priority.
Right.
And if it bothers me that it's not a priority, then I make time for it. And when it comes to our mental health, I think like you have to make time for it. It's so important. Literally, our brains, like the center foundation of our brains is emotion. And when we don't know how to learn from that or use our emotions, then we're in trouble.
Yeah. So put it in the work. It's the same concept as for me, shoeing. I stretch every day, and there are specific stretches. If I don't do them, I'm going to be walking around like a stoved up 80-year-old person, and I'm only in my 40s. So whether it is I stretch in the morning or in the evening when I get home, I have to make the time to stretch for 20 minutes. Otherwise, I'm a grouchy SOB. And it's all connected. So you have to make the time for your brain and your emotions and how you handle things. Otherwise, your brain will get tight, just like my back gets tight, and then you'll be grumpy and snap at people and or make a bad decision.
Mm-hmm. Are there any resources, books, practices, etc., you'd recommend for those wanting to start their journey toward better mental health?
Well, obviously your podcast, because we're on it.
Hey, thanks.
So
tell your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends. There's some books that I shouldn't quote these books or say anything because I'm so bad about reading, but I know these books help. It's Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He was former Navy SEAL. Who was in Iraq when I was there. And then like books like The Body Keeps Score and stuff like that. And then if you're really looking for a therapist, like online, I get, what is the website? BetterHelp.com, I think.
That's one of them.
Yeah. There's that one. And the nice thing about that is, like, if you're afraid of putting your stuff out on the street, nobody's going to know. And let's see here. We've already talked about the journaling strategy.
I like strategery. I know it's not a real word, but I like it.
Yeah. And then like the podcast, there's a couple podcasts I listen to, Jordan Peterson, but the problem with his podcast is it gets a little too in depth. It's not very much for the working man. But then the one that I try to listen to, there's two of them I listen to daily. One is Dry Creek Wrangler, and that's more along the cowboy side of thing. He's pretty good about going through stuff that happens every week. And then for military side, it's a guy who was in the Marines and he was a firefighter. And that one's really good for trauma because he has seen some things that were pretty gnarly, and it hits the nail on the head for trauma. His name's Travis Howes, and his podcast is Create Your Own Light. That one will pull at your heartstrings. And then, like, for doing inner work, there's a poem, The Invitation. I feel bad because I can't even remember the author or where you would find it, but you can Google it and read it online.
Let me Google it right now, and we'll find the author.
I used to read that daily.
By Oriah Mountain Dreamer.
And it puts your mind in perspective about certain things, about how it doesn't matter what other people think. What matters is what you think. But then there's a part in there where it asks you if you can sit with your own company. And if you can't sit with your own company, sit with your own thoughts and all that, you might want to think about doing some inner work. I used to read that daily, if not weekly. And when I start getting in my own head a lot, I read that.
Like a spiritual practice.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just started one of those this week. Not this one,
Yeah.
but the welcoming prayer.
Oh, okay.
I heard it on a podcast episode, and then I read it in a book. And then a friend texted me and said, "Have you thought about doing the welcoming prayer?"
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, that's 3 times within just a few weeks. I feel like the Holy Spirit is trying to tell me that I need to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't listen, the Holy Spirit's going to start pushing a lot harder.
Yeah. It's crazy. I like it when that happens, when there's like definitive, repetitive messages, because then I know, like, all right.
You need to start paying attention and wake up to it.
Yep. You are not on any social media publicly, correct?
No, just my own personal pages.
Okay. So here's what I'm proposing. If any listeners have questions for Jake, send them to me at the email in the show notes or DM me on Instagram, and we'll have Jake back on.
Sounds good.
I mean, provided that's okay with Jake.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Whenever.
I sometimes feel like we should just set up the recording stuff while you're shoeing the horses.
I had that exact thought when I was driving up this morning.
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to figure something else out because this mic, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think that'd be really cool.
That can edit out all my Tourette's and cussing when I smash my thumb or something.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard you cuss when you're shoeing. Oh, yes, I did too, because at one time Paisley ripped her foot out from you. And yeah, okay. Yeah, I have.
It happens.
But it wasn't that bad. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Me.
And we'll get you back.
You bet.
With that, until next time, draw good movement. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for you. If you found value in this episode, I'd love for you to share with others who might also benefit from tuning in. Share by word of mouth, send it in a text, take a screenshot and post it on social media, or share however you prefer. And if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Until next time, draw good movement.